Hotel Season 1 has officially ended, and not only was that finale fantastic, I think that it was a really good conclusion to the first season and story thus far, but it also opened up a lot of really cool possibilities for future seasons, and we already know that Season 2 has already been confirmed. So, what did the finale set up? What is going to happen in Season 2? And are our favorite characters actually going to survive? I really want to go over some of this stuff because there was a lot of good information that was given to us in the finale, and of course, in the season as a whole. So, let's get into it. So let's start off with Alistair, who's not only one of the most interesting characters in the series, but is definitely going to be one of the main antagonists of the show moving forward. I think what's very interesting about Alistair's character is that he's always presented himself as somebody who's only at the hotel in order to see demons suffer and struggle to try to redeem themselves. But throughout the series, he's actively taken a role in helping the people around him, almost as if he's trying to gain their trust, which I think is the big thing about Alistair's character. Alistair understands that he's a very powerful demon, and if he really wanted to just see souls suffer and struggle, he could do that anywhere else, but he specifically chooses Charlie. Now, there is also the fact that Alistair's soul is definitely under contract by somebody who's presumably more powerful than him, and he makes reference to this in the finale of the show, in which in his final reprise song, he does state that he is under contract, he's actively being nerfed, and his main goal was always to be in control of everything around him. And this is why Alistair is going to be one of the main antagonists of the series going forward, because although he's hiding his true intentions under a smile, nobody is going to suspect that the altruistic Alistair is really evil underneath. And I think that the deal that was struck between him and Charlie during episode 7 is going to come back in full. There's a reason why Alistair is acting so kind to Charlie, making reference that it's the daughter that he never had, that he loves and cares for her. And of course, the fact that Charlie can trust him. And I think that Alistair is going to take advantage of the trust that Charlie has in him. Because for right now, it seems like Alistair has been giving in way too much to Charlie and the Hazbin Hotel cast. He is not only protecting them, he's not only doing exactly what Charlie states, what the rest of the cast states, but he's being a very big help, even saying out loud that he really does enjoy the people there. But does he? Or is he just hiding this again under a smile so that his true motives can actually be expanded upon and work out? And this is what I think Alistair is going to do. I don't think that in Season 2 he's going to actively become one of the main villains, but I think that he's going to try to get a lot closer to Charlie, because if his main goal is control, he's going to want to have a good access to one of the strongest people in hell. He's going to need Charlie, because Charlie is one of the most powerful people in the series and has the possibility to be the strongest person in hell, eventually overtaking Lucifer, which, in my opinion, is what Alistair's true goal eventually is, to take control of Charlie's power in order to free himself from his contract and eventually take the place of Lucifer in hell. And that, I think, is going to lead perfectly into two other characters who I think are going to be main antagonists of the series. The first one is Lilith, and the second one is Eve. Now, I think that a lot of people think that Alistair's soul contract was made with Lilith, and that Lilith is the one who's having Alistair watch over Charlie. But with everything that happened at the ending, I don't think that's the case anymore. It seems like Lilith has completely abandoned her family at this point, making a contract with Adam in order to reside up in heaven. And if Adam had continued to live and didn't die in the finale, she probably would have never gone back to go see her daughter or to ever go see Lucifer again. So I think that her having to go down to hell is going to not be very good for Charlie, who thought that her mother had left to do something very important, but instead abandoned her family. Now, the other character I want to bring up is Eve. In the fight between Adam and Lucifer, Lucifer makes reference to the fact that not only was he able to get with Lilith, but also with Eve. It was very weird, and I'm not sure if they're referring to the apple incident or if they're referring to something else. But it also is very strange that we don't see Eve anywhere in the series. That's right, the only time she has a mention is at the very beginning, and then she's completely forgotten about. Or maybe she's actually down in hell, which would make a lot more sense that Adam and Lilith had made a contract so that Lilith could go back up to heaven if Eve was nowhere to be found. So I think that it's far more likely now that Eve is the one who's in control of Alistair and is making Alistair actively watch over Charlie. This, I think, would be far more interesting because it seems like the politics of heaven and hell are now going to start revolving around Charlie. And I think that Lilith and Eve are both going to be antagonists, but also are going to be at opposite ends of each other. Eve and Lilith probably don't really like each other given their history. So I think it's interesting that Eve is probably trying to get Charlie to be more trusting of her and to take over her power, whereas Lilith may be far more antagonistic, even going so far as to actively harm her own child. I think that this is probably going to be one of the most interesting dynamics coming up if they end up going this route. And I think that especially for Charlie, having to not only see her mother as a villain, but also thinking that Alistair and Eve could be her only out to certain things would be super cool. So I hope that they explore this later in the future. And now that we talked about the main antagonists of the show, I want to kind of switch a little bit to the reoccurring villains that are probably going to be more prominent this season. That, of course, being the V's. Vox, Valentino, and Velvet. These three characters were established pretty early in the first season, but I think that they're going to have a far greater presence on the plot and story coming up, especially with Valentino and Angel Dust's relationship. There has to be something with Angel Dust's soul contract, and I think that in the second season, there is going to be an episode dedicated to Angel Dust trying to get his soul back and trying to get out of his contract. I also think that Vox and Alistair are going to have a very interesting dynamic going forward, and I think that Vox is going to push Alistair too far. He seems way too cocky at this point, and I feel like we do need a villain to eventually bite the dust by Alistair's hand, and I think it would be perfect after everything that happened in the finale for Alistair to get his revenge on Vox. Now, for Velvet, I think that Velvet has always been shown in the background of the V's, as Valentino and Vox have always taken center stage, but I think that after season 2, she is going to take full control of the company, and it makes a lot of sense. She seems like she has the best business sense, it seems like she has the most level head, and it also seems like she has the most passion and aggression out of all of the people there. So I think that although they're all going to be recurring villains, Velvet is going to be the big one to step up by the end of season 2. And so now that we talked about the hell side of things, let's talk about the heaven side, and more specifically, let's talk about Emily and Sarah. Now, it seems like Sarah did know that sinners could actually be redeemed, and during the conversation with Charlie during that huge court meeting, it seemed like there's a reason why they don't actively tell sinners that they have another chance at life, because after what happened with Sir Pentious, we know that souls do go through a second trial. They do get judged again, and if they live their sinner life in a more respectable way, they're able to get back up to heaven. And judging by the reactions of Emily and Sarah, it is very clear that Emily had no idea that this was possible, but it seems like Sarah was scared or disgusted or didn't think that this was possible. And it could be just to protect the winners up in heaven. You don't want people who had already lived down in hell and done God knows what coming up to heaven and then maybe even trying to get other people to commit sins up there. This could definitely just be the defense mechanism and why she thought that Charlie's dream was not unreachable, but something that was undesirable. You don't want sinners up in heaven regardless if they change, and that could have been the stance that Sarah took in order to protect heaven, whereas Emily wants to see that all human souls have the potential for great good and great evil. And I do see a possibility where Emily and Charlie have far more interaction, and also I see a possibility that Emily does go down to hell in order to see what's happening at the hotel. There could also be a very interesting thing with Vaggie, Charlie, and Emily. They kind of made a little bit of a reference to this to episode 6, where Emily just had absolutely no interest in Charlie whatsoever, but Vaggie thinks that she does. Could be pretty funny, and I feel like a lot of people love those love triangles, so they'll probably throw it in. But I do think that Emily and Sarah are eventually going to end up on opposite sides of the spectrum, and it could even be that Emily does eventually become a fallen angel like Lucifer because she actively goes against what heaven is trying to do. If she goes against the rules too much, as Sarah's already put it, she's going to become just like Lucifer and she's going to fall just like him. And she could end up being barred from heaven entirely, which I think could be a really cool path for them to take, that every time somebody tries to actively change the system, they are cast down from heaven, meaning that the system will eventually need to be overturned so that people do have these second chances at life. So then, what's left for Charlie in the main cast? Well, I think that there is a lot of stuff to go through, especially the fact that the hotel is probably going to be filled with a lot more people coming up, since Lucifer is now taking an active role in trying to rehabilitate people. Will it take more of a villain of the week or a problem of the week sort of stance? It could, but I think that a big thing about Charlie is that she's going to have to deal with a lot more emotional issues and emotional stress, and also having to deal with the fact that Lilith, Eve, and Alistair are all trying to kind of take control of her or get rid of her in a way. So this is going to be very interesting because I think that Charlie is going to be one of the main focuses of season 2. Although everybody in the background is going to be trying to actively go up against her, I do think that there's going to be a bigger spotlight on Charlie and her relationships with everybody around her. So I think that there's a lot of stuff that's being set up, and I'm pretty excited for it. But I'd love to hear what you guys think. Do you guys think that season 2 is going to be better than season 1? What do you think's going to happen? And do you think that anything I said has any merit? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. So if you like this video, comment, like, subscribe, and let me know what you guys think down below. Until next time, Tanuki Crew, peace, peace!